If you do not learn, you will pay. And the currency will not be pounds or dollars. It will be blood. Welcome back to Battlefield Arc. We often think of the war in Ukraine as a distant conflict, something happening over there on the news, far away from the quiet streets of Birmingham or the bustling centers of London. But today, a chilling warning has shattered that illusion. It comes not from a politician in a suit, but from a man standing knee-deep in the mud of the Donbas, watching the future of warfare unfold in real time. The message is stark. The British military is not ready. Its tactics are obsolete. Its soldiers are preparing for a war that no longer exists. And if the UK does not wake up to the brutal reality of fighting Vladimir Putin's Russia, British soldiers will be slaughtered on the battlefield. This isn't fear-mongering. This is a direct tactical assessment from Major Viktor Andrusiv, a man who has seen the face of modern war. Today, we are diving deep into his warning. Why does he believe Britain is walking into a trap? What has changed on the battlefield that Western generals don't understand? And most importantly, is it already too late to adapt? To understand the weight of this warning, you have to understand who is giving it. Viktor Andrusiv is not your typical soldier. Before he put on the uniform, he was a high-ranking presidential advisor. He understands geopolitics. He understands strategy, and now, as a serving officer in the Ukrainian army, he understands the grim reality of the trench. He bridges the gap between the theoretical war planned in headquarters and the chaotic war fought on the ground. When Major Andrusiv looks at the British Army, and by extension NATO forces, he sees a force that is well-trained, disciplined, and professional. But he also sees a force that is preparing for the last war, not the current one. In a recent interview that has sent shockwaves to the Ministry of Defense, Andrusiv didn't mince words. He warned that the British military's textbook approach to combat is dangerously outdated. He argues that Western armies are suffering from a dangerous arrogance, believing that superior technology alone guarantees victory. But in the mud of Ukraine, he has seen Russian forces adapt, evolve, and survive. He knows that if British troops try to fight the Russians today using standard NATO doctrine, the results would be catastrophic. What is the core of the problem? According to Major Andrusiv, it is twofold: numbers and psychology. First, let's look at the numbers. The British Army currently stands at roughly 70,000 active troops, its smallest size since the Napoleonic Wars, against a Russian war machine that has mobilized hundreds of thousands of men and absorbed over 1 million casualties only to keep coming. A force of 70,000 is a drop in the ocean. Andrusiv warns that the UK lacks the mass to sustain a high-intensity conflict. You cannot rotate troops, you cannot absorb losses, and you cannot hold a long front line with such a skeleton crew. But the bigger problem is psychological. The biggest problem, Andrusiv says, is that people do not believe this can happen. In the UK, war is viewed as a theoretical concept or a peacekeeping mission. But total war, the kind where missiles strike apartment blocks and drones hunt individual soldiers, requires a different mindset. Andrusiv warns that British society is not mentally prepared for the sheer scale of violence that Russia can unleash. He draws a parallel to Ukraine before 2022. Many Ukrainians also thought a full-scale invasion was crazy and impossible. They were wrong. And he fears Britain is making the same fatal mistake. This brings us to the most critical part of the warning: the tactics. Why does Major Andrusiv say British tactics are outdated? Because the battlefield has become transparent. For decades, Western military doctrine relied on maneuvering armored columns, tanks and infantry fighting vehicles, moving together to smash the enemy. But in Ukraine, the sky is filled with thousands of eyes. Drones are everywhere. Andrusiv points out that you cannot hide anymore. As soon as a British tank column would start its engine, it would be spotted by a $500 drone. Minutes later, artillery would rain down. The era of the surprise armored blitz is over, replaced by a deadly game of hide-and-seek involving FPV, first-person view, suicide drones, and electronic warfare. Western armies are not training enough for this drone hell. They are not training to look up constantly. They are not trained to fight without GPS, which the Russians jam routinely. They are not prepared for a war where a cheap piece of plastic can destroy a multi-million-dollar Challenger 2 tank. Andrusiv's message is simple. If you march onto the field like you did in Iraq or Afghanistan, you will be wiped out in hours. The Russians have learned this lesson through blood. The British have not learned it yet. War is closer than we think. Deaths are closer than we think. These are the haunting words Major Andrusiv leaves us with. The warning is not just about needing more tanks or more money. It is a warning about survival. If the British military does not overhaul its training, if it does not embrace the chaos of drone warfare, and if the British public does not realize that safety is not guaranteed, the consequences will be irreversible. We are entering a new era of history, one where the rules of 1990 no longer apply. The Ukrainian officer's warning is a gift, a chance to learn from their suffering without having to pay the price yourself. But if that gift is ignored, if the UK continues to rest on its laurels and its history, the next war will not be a victory parade. It will be a tragedy. Britain has a choice. Learn to fight the new war now, or pay with blood later. Thanks for watching Battlefield Arc. What do you think? Is the British military ready for a modern peer-to-peer war? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories from the front lines of history.